You know, for a movie titled Ladies in Lavender, you don't actually get to see the actual ladies in the movie wearing any lavender clothes. Kind of makes the title rather misleading, doesn't it?
In a peaceful village, in a world on the brink of war.
What's that there? I think it's a body.
A young stranger will appear from nowhere.
He's alive. We think that you were shipwrecked.
His arrival will awaken emotions.
He's so young, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Are you hungry?
Oh, Ursula, stop it. You look like a cannibal.
Arouse suspicions.
I still think it's rather odd.
Bugger doesn't speak a word of English.
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
Yeah.
Bed.
Bed.
We're learning English.
You might be Ursula. You are making holes in the furniture.
And change the lives of all who meet him.
Forgive me, I simply couldn't help responding to such marvelous playing. Was it you?
It was neither of us.
You don't think that was rather rude, Janet?
No, I do not.
But in a time of war,
Who's he?
He's a foreigner.
there are some things
You're behaving rather oddly.
I was the one who saw him first.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
that should never be trusted.
I dislike that woman.
She frightens me. She's like a witch in a fairy tale.
Andrea!
Dr. Mead said they were speaking German.
I speak fluent German. Does he think I'm involved in espionage as well?
Well, no. Don't you think we should tell the authorities that he's here?
Why you don't tell me? I don't understand why.
A film written and directed by Charles Dance.
Ursula, what are you doing?
Academy Award winner Judi Dench. Academy Award winner Maggie Smith. Natasha McElhone. And Daniel Bruhl. Ladies in Lavender.
Hello there, Richard the Film Geek here, and I'm here to give you guys my review of the 2004 British drama film Ladies in Lavender, which is adapted from a 1908 William J. Locke short story by Tyrion Lannister from Game of Thrones himself, Charles Dance, who also makes his directorial debut here, stars the late Dame Maggie Smith, aka Professor Minerva McGonagall from the Wizarding World franchise, as well as the Dowager Countess of Grantham from Downton Abbey, fellow Dame Judi Dench, aka M, from the Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig era Bond films, Natasha McElhone, Professor Sprout herself, Miriam Margolyes, the late David Warner, and Daniel Bruhl in his very first English-speaking role before his breakthrough international debut performance as Frederick Zoller in Inglourious Bastards, his Academy Award-nominated performance as Niki Lauda in Rush, and of course his current role within the MCU as Helmut Zemo in Captain America Civil War and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The story of Ladies in Lavender takes place in pre-World War II Cornwall, which, on a brief side note, as far as I'm remotely aware, is the first major deviation from the original short story, which itself apparently takes place prior to the outbreak of World War I. And we follow two elderly sisters named Janet and Ursula, played by Maggie Smith and Judi Dench, as their normal, sleepy and peaceful existence gets turned upside down when they spot from their garden the nearly drowned body of a handsome young man lying on the beach. They take him in, they nurse him back to health. They attempt to communicate with him in broken German whilst teaching him English. They discover he is actually Polish. His name is Andrea. He has a talent for violin playing, and that he was heading for America in pursuit of a better life. It doesn't really take the two sisters long to become attached to the young man. One of them, in particular, Ursula, begins to develop sexually repressed and unrequited romantic feelings for him. However, other townspeople have their suspicions about him, especially after he is befriended and seduced by a German woman named Olga, played by Natasha McElhone. So now that I've just seen the movie for the first time, here are my thoughts on Ladies in Lavender. Yeah, it's not really that good. In fact, in all honesty, I was kind of left disappointed by this movie, which sucks for me to say because I usually go into these movies with an open mind. I don't like going into these movies wanting to hate them beforehand, because I firmly believe doing so is a frankly disingenuous way of going about experiencing a movie, especially for the first time. But man, this movie had potential to be better than it ultimately was, but it just failed to live up to that potential, in my view. Were there things that I at least liked about the movie? Yes, some of the technical aspects are nicely done. The Cornish setting, the warm and cosy atmosphere, The sets, the cinematography, the costumes, even Nigel Hess's score, which happens to feature classical music, all make for one beautifully well shot and orchestrated movie to look at. The acting is fine for the most part. I mean, Toby Jones is in the movie, but only in a thankless bit role. Natasha McElhone is just there, really. Nothing much to write home about, frankly. David Warner, the man who was Bob Cratchit alongside George C. Scott in the 1984 film adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and also the man who brought Ra's al Ghul so perfectly to life with his voice in Batman the Animated Series, is kind of wasted here. Miriam Margolyes, I probably have to say, is the best supporting player in the movie. Whenever she was on screen, her scenes admittedly never failed to make me chuckle, largely due to her natural comedic timing. And I actually wish this movie was more about these three women interacting with one another and less centered on this weird and borderline creepy-ass romance, which I am going to get into a bit later on in the video, don't you worry. Almost forgot to mention Daniel Bruhl. He's fine in the movie. I mean, good for him that he's at least gone on to bigger and better projects since this movie, and has thus gone on to work with other talented filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino, Ron Howard, and especially Kevin Feige. He does pull off the sweetness and the childlike innocence of his character really well. The scenes where he plays the violin, and on another minor side note, that is actually him playing the violin, are beautifully touching, heartfelt, and take an awful amount of real skill to get right. But when you watch him in this movie, he doesn't really leave that much of an impression because his character is that much of a blank slate. You don't have a clue where he comes from, and you're not even shown, but instead only told what his backstory is. And at times you almost kind of forget he was even in the movie. But obviously the two standouts, and by far the biggest reason to watch this movie, are Dames Maggie Smith, R.I.P., and Judi Dench. I mean, come on. Of course these two are going to light up the screen in anything they're in, whether together in the case of this film, or the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel duology, for example, or especially individually in the case of Bond, Harry Potter or Downton. We're talking here about two of the greatest actresses of their generation who, ever since they first worked together on A Room with a View back in 1985, were very close friends in real life, and thus really enjoyed being in each other's company, as evidenced by the documentary film they made in 2018, alongside fellow dames Eileen Atkins and Joan Plowright, Nothing Like a Dame, as well as the opportunity to act off of one another. However, saying that, you would honestly think this movie could have made great use of the talents of these two acting legends. Sadly, it doesn't quite do that, which is a shame. The first major problem I have with this movie is the pacing. For a movie that is an hour and 46 minutes long, it honestly felt like 3 hours. It was just so painfully boring. I even noticed that the person I was directly sitting next to during the showing of this movie seemed to be drifting off to sleep. If you can't even hold the audience's interest and end up sending them half to sleep throughout the entire runtime of your movie, that's when you know something went wrong here. Not to even mention the fact that this looks and feels more like an extended episode of an ITV drama series than an actual movie. Unless I'm missing something here, what I mean by that is that this just doesn't feel cinematic. It instead feels like a movie that was clearly made for TV, but just happened to get a theatrical release for some baffling reason. The second major problem I have with this movie is the way Charles Dance decided to direct this thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like Charles Dance. I think he is one of the finest actors still working today here in the UK. And really bless him for trying as a first-time director. But I'm not going to lie when I say that I struggled to understand what the hell happened, or even what he was trying to say here. Now, I'm not saying here that his direction is pretentious or self-indulgent per se, but rather that it is unfortunately all over the shop. It's almost as if he didn't really know the type of movie he was making, or even what he wanted it to be. Did he want it to be a period drama? Did he want it to be a romantic comedy? Did he want it to be an epic romance? Did he even want it to be a modern epic fairy tale? Whatever he was trying to go for here, it just doesn't work, and instead feels like a hodgepodge of ideas clumsily cobbled together to make a narratively jumbled and confused mess. Speaking of which, the final and biggest problem I have with this movie is not really just the writing, but the story as well. Or rather, the way it was executed. To which I really have to ask, Charles, I really like and respect you, but I seriously need to know, what the hell were you thinking here? And where the hell were you going with this? Again, don't get me wrong. I perfectly understand if this was meant to be like a modern fairy tale, a textbook exercise in old-fashioned escapism, especially with the added backdrop of World War II, one of the darkest, most dangerous and turbulent times in modern history. But you really expect us as an audience to be emotionally invested in this frankly weird, cringy, ridiculous and borderline creepy ass storyline of an elderly woman having sexually repressed, unrequited romantic feelings for a handsome, much younger man who would actually be older enough to be her son, rather than a toy boy lover in real life.
What?
I really hesitate to use this little clip from the film, but I swear, Maggie Smith, God rest her soul, perfectly sums up the response to this in my head. Charles, with all due respect...
Don't be ridiculous.
I mean, good God, man. I honestly don't know whether you accidentally stumbled across a fan fiction website while you were writing this, or you were just cruising through the motions as you went along. But I honestly feel like I'm watching Attack of the Clones all over again, because this plot point literally has the exact same emotional investment and resonance of Anakin and Padme's romance in that film. In conclusion, Ladies in Lavender is a film that I really wanted to like, largely obviously due to the god-tier star power of its two leads, Dames Maggie Smith and Judi Dench. But to say that this film left me feeling pretty underwhelmed, let down, frustrated, and above all disappointed is an understatement. If you happen to like this movie more than I do, that's perfectly fine. If you happen to be in the same boat as I am and you dislike this movie, that's perfectly fine too. Heck, if you're even curious enough to want to check out this movie for the first time, as I was going into this review, that's also perfectly fine. More power to you. I can only recommend this film if you like Maggie Smith and Judi Dench and want to see them act together in a nice looking little film with a similar Cornish setting to Doc Martin. And with all that being said, my overall rating for Ladies in Lavender has to be a 4 out of 10. Don't forget to do the following few things as always. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on Ladies in Lavender. Subscribe to my channel. Click on the little bell to receive any emailed notifications and or updates from my channel. If you haven't already, you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, and newly on Blue Sky. Do take care, everyone, and goodbye.